What is up, fam? It's your boy Paul P. Henny, and this is the One Day at a Time podcast. That's right, we're in this thing together, fam. I'm really excited today because I have my first guest, and this is special, okay? Because this is my friend. This is my brother. I mean, we have been brothers for over 20 years now. Literally one of my best friends in the world. He is the president and owner of Lux Out and all of their products. Okay, he could talk about that a little bit later. And so I'm excited to have with me today my boy Bruce Vann. Bruce, what is going on, man?
Hey, Mr. Henderson, P. Henny. Good to see you, man. It's always a pleasure, brother. Always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure, man. Always a pleasure. And man, I cannot believe where we are now. Just with our, with our families. I mean, you were there, at my wedding as my best man, and you seen me grow with Kiara and I and our four boys. I was there at your wedding, to your bride, and seeing you all bring this amazing son in the world. Man, life is good, man. Life is good.
It sure is. Yeah.
Yeah. So how's business coming along?
It's business is overall, and I give you the honest answer. It's always a mixed bag. There's always something that's going phenomenally, and then there's always something that is like, this is just running terribly. But right. Overall, when you average it all out together, it's doing very, very well. We're growing by a lot. Last year we grew organically by 50% year over year, and then this year, I don't know what our growth is going to be, but last I checked, we were about 40% over the previous year, and so now we're just even trying to build the capacity to continue doing what we're doing. So it's a blessing to get that kind of organic growth, but it's also a challenge because it's like, oh man, how do I actually do this, and how do I get all these people to work together without picking fights with one another, all of that.
Right.
So but overall,
yeah, I hear you, man. And it's almost like it's the you have the blessing, right? You have the blessing, the thing that you worked for all of this time. You have this business that's serving customers, and that's also just helping to provide for your family, provide for the families of others. And then you also have just the day-to-day things that you have to go through in order to keep that thing running. And I know you see a lot, especially, as the owner, and everything that you have to go through, and there's so many things that your employees may not see, or they may not even be thinking about, that you always have to be considering. So So what's amazing, man, I think about our journey together. We met back in 2003, June of 2003, and I'll never forget. I think you had just turned 18, right? And I was 17, about to turn 18, and we were working through this coach program, and man, we met a lot of amazing friends, and that's kind of where it began for us. But what's so cool, Bruce, is especially us being roommates and being friends all these years, having a chance to read some of your bio. I'm like, hold on, wait, when did this happen? And how did I not know this part of your story? So do me a favor, man. Take me back to your childhood and some of your experiences, growing up.
Yeah, sure. So I was, to give you the broad-based backstory, I have a sister who's older than me by 7 years, named Marquita, and I love her very much. She is biologically my half sister. So my father was married before to her mother, and that didn't work out. And then my father, I think shortly after she was born, my father came to Christ and really changed his life. And the Lord delivered him from the taste of cigarettes and alcohol out of his mouth, like in one night, as soon as he was converted. Wow. And so then shortly after that, my dad met my mom, which is a story in and of itself. And then my parents got married a year later, and then they had me 4 years later. And by the time they had me, I was born with one leg shorter than the other and a dislocated hip. I don't know what happened. I don't know whether my mom bent away in the womb. I don't know whether I kicked in some kind of crazy way. I don't know whether the Lord did like Jacob and touched my hip in the socket and made my thing come loose or whatever. I don't know what happened, but the hip dislocated and that stunted the growth of my femur, and it was the one of probably the defining injury of my life. Because one of my legs was shorter than the other, and then by the time I was 8, I had to have a bunch of surgeries. I'd started with one surgery, but it kept complicating into more surgeries. But basically, where they would go in, cut my leg open, move the muscle out the way, crack my femur, run a bunch of rods and wires into my leg, attach those rods and wires to this big contraption that I would click every day, and as my bone tried to heal itself, it would grow. My body would grow new bone. Was in theory what would happen, but then there were complications even with that, where Blue Cross and Blue Shield, and I'm going to say them by name because they did it. Blue Cross and Blue Shield canceled my physical therapy despite the earnest plea of my doctor and some other and my mom. And when they did that, I was laying in bed one night. I was 9 years old after already having the complications with the surgery and like breaking out in hives and having a cast and not being able to scratch. It was just bad. But I was laying in bed one night and my the pain woke me up out of my sleep, and I heard and felt my bone go snap. My newly formed bone go snap because my muscle started to atrophy around the newly formed bone, and the bone was about to burst out of my leg. They had to rush me back up to Charlottesville to get emergency surgery, and my normal doctor couldn't even work on it because he was on vacation. And so I don't remember how many. Go ahead.
How far of a drive was it from your house to Charlottesville?
So that's a good question. Probably about 2.5, 3 hours is my guess. And we were going back and forth there all the time. And so at the same time, when all that was happening for that 2-year span, I didn't really see my sister at all. And I thought for a long time that, like even after that period, I thought she just didn't want to be around me and all that other stuff. And I kind of had that as a chip on my shoulder for most of my life. And then I talked to her recently. We had like a breakthrough conversation, and I realized she didn't. It wasn't even that she didn't want to be around me. It was just she didn't want to be around for some other reasons. She didn't like that she felt like my dad was strict. But I was like, well, you just didn't never ever want to be around me. And I just kind of took that rejection even within myself. And that's been my life story. But I think I've recently overcome even that, which is a major breakthrough for me personally.
Wow. So, and one, I'm so glad to hear about the process and the fact that you and your sister were able to have that breakthrough. It's amazing. Sometimes just what an open and honest conversation can do. You're able to, unlock things. You're able to, uncover misunderstandings and, do your best to try to get on the same page, especially if you both come with a humble spirit and are both willing to, to work toward that. And, man, that's a lot. That's a lot. And even the story that you just told about, hearing that situation with your bone in the middle of the night and having to drive, 2.5 hours up to Charlottesville. I never knew that until now you're telling me this. And that's such an amazing thing, especially to see where you are today. So how do you recall like your process? And I know you were fairly young at the time. How old were you about this time?
Oh, that started the week after my 8th birthday. So
the
from
week after your 8th birthday
till right around the time I turned 10, I didn't walk.
Okay.
Or I walked with a walker or crutches or a wheelchair or something. That entire time, I always had complications just getting up and walking. So, yeah, for 2 years, which was rough for any little boy, but it's especially rough for a little boy coming from our area because you have all these freaks of athletic nature around us, and there's like this social pressure to try to go and be some great athlete and stuff like that. But if you can't do it, you can't do it, So, yeah.
Wow. And I like you said, I mean, at the time we didn't know each other, but we probably only lived about 10 to 15 minutes, away from each other, knowing where your parents lived in Hampton, knowing where we were living in Hampton at the time. And I can't even imagine, like what it was like for you to see, wanting to be an athlete. I recall when I was 8 years old, that was my first year ever playing baseball
Hmm.
and playing church league basketball and so on and so forth. And then you're sitting there having procedure after procedure, using walkers and wheelchairs. What helped you make it through? What helped you make it through that portion of your life?
Man, you got to get me to cry. I just, I distinctly remember it being very, very rough. And I remember listening to on repeat every night that Ron Canoli album. And the song that plays in my head that really encouraged me, funny enough, had nothing to do with any like struggle or anything like that. It was that song, Ancient of Days, blessing and honor, glory
Oh
and
yeah,
power.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
The
Absolutely,
Ancient
absolutely.
of Days. That song, uh, I that helped me because it like, helped me to think even at 8. And I still have my frustrations and faults like anybody else, but it was like, all right, this is the big picture. I don't understand why I am going through this crap right now. This is stupid and I hate it. But the big picture is one day I'm going to die. And after I die, I'm going to be part of a procession and we're all going to see the Lamb of God go and take his throne and his seat. And and it's all going to make sense and it's all going to be worth it. And that that like that song encouraged, like drilled that into my spirit and helped me a lot. I mean, of course, there were people who came along and helped. Like my parents were amazing supports, and then our church family, both at Bethel Temple and at the Abyssinia Baptist Church in Newport News at the time, were very, very helpful. But I would say in terms of what like really reached me on a deeply personal level, it was that song. It was the Holy Spirit using that song as a means to help me take a step back and and view my suffering from a long term perspective.
Wow, wow, wow. And man, that's awesome. That's amazing. And I think about your parents. I love your parents, man. And I just recall meeting them, and especially the dynamics with you and your dad. Your situation was just a little different than mine. Different fathers show their love in different ways, and I hadn't really seen a father and son embrace the way you and your dad did. And every time he would come up to VCU and you all would embrace, I'm like, this is different. This is different. But it was a beautiful different. And every father son relationship looks a little different based on personalities, preferences, so on and so forth. But I'd never seen that, and that was something that I always really admired. And so, like, if you could just tell me just a couple of things, or just overall, like the support that your parents provided, or what it really meant to you during that time.
Yeah, I think so. My parents supported me in different ways, and they always have. So my mom is very much. I'm very much like my mom, where I get this kind of strong focus on something, and it's going to happen. Like I'm set. My mom has the saying from the scriptures, like, "Well, set my face as flint, and I'm gonna get this thing done." And so I get this determination from her. So my mom was very much like, to use a football analogy, like drop your shoulder and plow uh, through the obstacle to the next whatever the next practical step was, and feel later and go through your feelings and everything later. And I appreciate that about her because I know that that was really rough for her to hear her 8, 9 year old son frustrated about surgeries, going off on the doctors, saying, I wish I was never born because I don't want to go through this, all of that.
Mm.
I know that had to be gut wrenching for her to hear her only son say that stuff, but she still was very much supportive and prayerful and
Wow,
in the
wow.
word and all of that. And I just admire her. Um, I admire her. People talk about like strong women and whatnot. I'd be like, that's a cliche. That's what I be thinking. That's a cliche. Y'all just like saying that just to be saying that. But like when I say my mom is like emotionally strong, she really, really, really is. And I'm not saying that just because she's my mom. If I had to think about all the women that I know, I would say, yeah, she's top of the list, an outlier. And God knew to have her to be my mom through all of that, and I appreciate her for that. And then my daddy, he my dad always brought my mind back, no matter what I was thinking or feeling or everything like that. He always brought my mind back to what does the Word of God say? What's the Word of God say? What's the Word of God say? So when I'm sitting there with my leg broken and all these complications and breaking out in hives and not knowing what's going on in my body, like all the things that could go wrong, like anesthesia making me throw up, and I don't want any anesthesia and all this other stuff, all of that, and then trying to get along socially with this big contraption on my leg and always in pain. My dad would say, the Lord would have my dad say, "You're more than a conqueror, Jesus Christ." He said, "You can do all things through Christ who strengthens you." Daddy, I can't even walk. Why are you sitting there telling me this? I can't walk. I mean, he would piss me off, all the way off when he would come with that word of faith stuff. But he was right. He was right in
Oh,
the long
wow,
term. I
wow.
had to hear it. And you know, if it comes by hearing, I had to hear it, and what they did in the way that they supported me is that the adversity, like adversity sucks, but it's really a gift. Like it really is a gift because if you because God can give us adversity or allow adversity. Maybe not. Maybe whether he gives it or he allows it, by like he did with Job. He can allow adversity to build certain characteristics in us that would not be there without the adversity. And so, if you take the adversity plus the faith in what he says, then it's like you just. I don't even know how to describe it. You just desert that you develop this perseverance and this. You just develop a perseverance that most people just wouldn't have on their own. And it's not to say that like one person's better than the other. It's just like these are characteristics they come from God. They're built by God into a person, and they're really ultimately for his glory. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's the way that both of them kind of supported me.
Wow, wow, absolutely, absolutely. And my thoughts are kind of going all different ways right now because seeing where you are now, having some success, in business and the growth that you're seeing now, but looking back to your childhood and seeing how some of the adversity that you dealt with then helped to shape, and it was almost like those were seeds that were planted.
Yeah.
And the reality is those seeds are planted. We never know exactly how they're going to uproot and when they will uproot, and we don't always know exactly the lessons that will come from the seeds that are planted, even going back to your childhood, 8 to 10 years old, and then I think about that, and I also know that you also started your entrepreneurial journey right around 10 years old, if I'm not mistaken, correct? So you
are
have
spot on.
all.
Yep.
Yeah. So you have all of this, and then you also started your entrepreneurial journey, like around that time, and now that 30 years later, I see where you are.
Yeah.
Take me back to when you were 10 years old,
Sure.
coming out of having all of those procedures, and then all of a sudden you say, "I'm going to be an entrepreneur." Like what the heck, man? You got to fill me in. Fill me in with the details of how you got there.
So I was 7 years old and I had a piggy bank, and I was going to my family member. I still remember this at my Uncle Cecil and Aunt Cheryl's house. And I think I was trying to lend money to them or something like that. I had like $10 in there, but I was like, you know what? I can do this with the $10. I can flip it this way, and I can do this, that, the other. And my dad saw me when I was sitting there talking to my grandma. My dad said, "You are an entrepreneur," and he said, and I was like, "Daddy over here calling me names." I didn't know what entrepreneur was. Daddy over here calling me names. Why are you calling me names, Daddy? So, but then I found out what it was. But I just would try things through the years. Like, so when I was 10, I was at Mary Atkins, which is Hampton Christian school, and I remember there was a big bag of popcorn at Farmore, and I was like, oh, that bag of popcorn is this amount of money. I can section it off into smaller bags and sell it to my classmates. And that's what I did. And then
Wow,
the
and I
next
remember
year,
I remember Farmore too, man. I remember Farmore.
If you were in Hampton, you remember Farmore from
Yeah.
that. So then the next year, I went to Eaton Middle School, and I was like, during lunchtime, I was like, all right, I'm gonna make this solution. I'm gonna clean everybody's shoes. People care about shoes and their Jordans and their Iversons and all this other stuff. I'm gonna clean shoes, and that's what I was doing. Clean the shoes for 10 cents, with a mixture of peroxide and rubbing alcohol on people's shoes. And so for me, it was always like, if I have free time, my mind automatically my disposition was always like, all right, how can I sell something to use the market to do whatever I'm going to do? Like, how can I present something to the market where I can make a profit and solve problems for somebody else? And that's just kind of what happens. I think I probably got that from, like, genetically, I probably got that from my mom's father, and yeah, I think that's probably where I got it from. That's what I say I got it from. I got it from my mom's father. He was an entrepreneur, he did everything he could to try to be an entrepreneur, and he had he made some money, but not a ton. I'm sure he would be very proud to see me now, and I stand on the shoulder of giants like him. But that's where I think I got the disposition to do that. It's fine to work for somebody else. Some people, that for me, this is just me. When I worked in other people's organizations, them jokers never, ever, ever, ever promoted me. I have never been promoted by somebody else in any job. And so my mind would wander on other jobs. Even when I was a security guard, I was the world's worst security guard for VCU. Because my mind will wonder the disposition that it's in. But you remember that, because I was telling somebody about that the other day. I was like, they used my police report as the example of exactly how not to do a police report. And all my friends saw it and said, that's Bruce's handwriting right there. We know
because we were working security around the same time. That's hilarious. I never knew that about them using your using your report as of what not to do.
Yeah.
That's funny, man. Yeah. So and then that entrepreneurial journey continued in high school, because I remember you telling me about this.
Yeah,
I do recall you telling me about this, and we would talk about this as we were roommates. And the thing that was it, candy that you were selling?
Yeah. So in high school, I did the same thing. I didn't want to work I didn't want to go get a job, because I did get a job. I started my first job at Chick-fil-A at 14, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is hard. I need to stay in school. They take no money in this. They take all this money out in taxes. I got to stay in school. And so what I did instead after I left Chick-fil-A was and they gave me appreciation. I still love Chick-fil-A to this day. But after that, I went and found there was a dollar store around the corner from my house. I actually saw DMX at that dollar, like on my way riding my bike to that dollar store.
No way.
Yeah, I ran into him. I was like, that is DMX. I was staring at him. I was kind of like, I'm glad he didn't respond harshly toward me, but I was just like, I can't believe DMX is in my neighborhood. He was getting some fish sandwich from the place in the same shopping center. But anyway, there's a dollar store that had all sorts of candies that you can think of, and they were $3, $4. And this was maybe like 2001, 2002. Might have been even 2000. But and so I go buy them, sell them for 50 cents, make a little bit of profit with that. And then I was like, you know what, and I was doing that and making money. I would sell out by lunchtime every day. And then once I started to drive, I was like, oh, word, I can go do this other thing. So I went back to that Farmore and found that they had 6 packs of Pepsi products, 24 ounces for $2. So I was like, all right, I'll just refrigerate this, put this in a bag, sell the drinks and the candy. And I did that. I would show up to school with big duffel bags of stuff, a full backpack and a duffel bag for my drinks. It was I was selling as much as I could carry, and I was making enough money to not get a job. like I could pay for gas and Taco Bell or whatever else from that. So once I did these things and had some sort of taste of what entrepreneurship was really like, to me, it was always like, all right, some sort of way, I got to find a way to get back there. I don't know how I'm going to get back there because I don't come from money. I didn't, that nor not crazy money. My parents ain't poor, don't get me wrong, but
Right.
they're not the hoity-toity people with goo gobs of money. My experience is going to be very different than my son's experience with me being a business owner. I'll put it that way. So yeah.
Right. Okay. Wow. So a little bit after this time is actually when we met, and
Yep.
we were working. It's funny hearing this now and knowing your thoughts about jobs, if you will, and knowing that we met through a job.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I also know that your love for the Lord and just being brought up in a Christian home, and I believe that was actually a part of the reason that you did it was because of that.
Oh, absolutely.
And I can honestly say that was not my reason. Okay, I grew up in the church and everything, and at the time I was actually working for Food Lion. And when my mom asked me about, doing this coach program, if you will, she said, you could be working as a camp counselor and it's another job. Bruce, all I was thinking was I'm about to have 2 jobs over the summer and I'm going to stack my dollars, I'm going to stack my coins so that I can be ready for our freshman year at VCU. Right.
Okay.
So I remember going into that first meeting. It was my brother and I, we go into this meeting. And then, we see everybody. I remember seeing you. I think that first meeting we were actually sitting on opposite sides of the room. And then they started playing, worship music. And I'm like, okay, this is different. Now, I grew up in the church and everything, but seeing worship music happen within a group our age, it was a little bit uncomfortable for a brother. Okay. And I recall looking over to my left, and some of our friends, to this day, Sonia. I mean, to this day, it's like my sister, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Christine and Sean and Shaniqua and so many others were in that room, and like everybody like had their hands up and was worshiping, and I'm like, what is going on? The beautiful thing about that summer, all of us working together, and then we would disperse and go to whatever campsites. I actually worked in the neighborhood right across the street from Michael Vick's neighborhood, right? And that summer literally changed my life. And you played a big role in that because once again, that I think I had never seen people our age be serious about having a relationship with Christ. So seeing you and seeing others there embracing the moments of worship, man, it literally changed my life. And that was 20 something years ago. And then I find out that we're going to the same college. We're going to VCU. So it was almost like every plan that I had going into college, because a brother had some plans. Okay. A brother had some plans. We was about to, get down with the get down. Right. And then I meet a Christian brother going to the same school. And I was like, God, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? And I'm so grateful, because 22 years later, we're still here. Right?
That's right.
22 years later. So when you think about that, your faith in business and that journey, throughout VCU, let's talk about that a little bit. Like what was that like for you? I know you had a couple of jobs. And I know some of your faith journey there because we kind of walked through some of it together. Yep. But tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think for VCU, my time at VCU, I feel like the challenge with our time at VCU, that was a really dramatic time in my life. But it was not without, the good thing was it was not without its certain bright spots and moments of where even there, Christ showed himself to be Lord repeatedly. So, I mean, there was There was the summer between our sophomore and junior year where
Right.
the miracles, literal miracles was happening, which with one of them being the lengthening of my leg,
Change
which was
change both of our lives.
absolutely, as I was like, this is flipping amazing. Like I've never
Right.
seen anything like this. There were certain people we would run into and talk with who were good, sincere connections in the faith. But it was, but I would say overall it was pretty challenging on my spirit. And in terms of what I learned there, VCU taught me academically. It taught me how to learn. It taught me how to look at a book or a program or some skill set or whatever, break it down into its smaller pieces, put an outline together, teach myself what I need to learn, go over what my notes are, and teach myself over and over again, and then take a test and hopefully get an A on the test. And I did a decent job of that. VCU also taught me. I learned it from an interpersonal perspective because I didn't grow up with siblings. I didn't understand. Not everybody has a heart like me, and you have to put certain boundaries on people because some people just like to cause chaos, and I didn't understand how to set boundaries and how to say no, you're tripping and you're out of your mind, and you're not going to suck me into that drama. I didn't know how to do that. But I definitely know how to do it now. And then I would say the other thing that I learned, and I remember learning this at 19, it was my first semester of my sophomore year. I was taking a business math class, and we learned the background math of how an amortization schedule or mortgage is calculated, how all that is calculated. And I sat there like, wow. And I distinctly remember learning it, walking out of that class, and it was like crisp and cold outside. I was walking on campus. I was like, wow, that might be one of the most important things I've ever learned in my life. I'm going to need to know this forever. And it was true, because that's when I learned, like, the skill that I learned, like, that was the basis for a lot of things that I used in finance later, and buying businesses and buying houses and being really strategic about stuff and all of that. And then I think the other thing that I learned was built on that was I took a real estate finance course and learned basically that on steroids and got an A in the class. But in that class, I had to take, we took as examples like 4 or 5 different people, and we had to make the tax returns for each of them. One was a renter, one was married, one had a mortgage and would depreciate X amount of their interest payments, and one did something, blah, blah, blah. And so going through that exercise taught me how to think through doing my own tax returns. And I've been doing my own tax returns by hand since I was 19, and claiming as much as I can legally claim that because I think that's the thing that I learned. That's kind of how the 2 places, in my opinion, this is just kind of broad life business advice. The 2 places where most people kind of get tripped up in their finances, and don't really break free from the middle class, in my opinion, are they don't think through tax decisions and they don't think through interest decisions. So if you think really thoroughly through interest and tax decisions a lot, and you know the interest rate you're paying, and you know what it's going to take to pay it down and all of that, you know how much extra, once you think through all of that, it becomes a lot clearer of a path of how to get ahead, how to avoid car payments and how to avoid credit card debt and all that other stuff. So that's what I took from that experience. This is a long-winded answer, but that's the answer.
No, that's fine, and I'm definitely taking some notes here because I think you just dropped a couple of nuggets, okay? And the brother, I'm trying to trying to get better myself when it comes to these areas, and also what's funny is I recall when we were roommates, specifically our junior year when we were roommates. And I would see you working so hard, and I'm in a process of my track career, and I'm going to weightlifting and practice and so on and so forth. And I would come home and I come to the dorm and I would see you working. I'm like, man, what the heck is he doing? So now I feel like I actually have some answers about some of the processes that you were putting yourself through as you was growing. It is beautiful to see how it all came together. And also the thing I want to touch on is you talked about the experience of the lengthening of your leg, and so this actually happened that summer, like you said, the summer between our sophomore and junior year.
Yep.
And so in the midst of everything that we're dealing with, in the midst of everything that you were learning, through business and math, and I was a history major, we had this amazing experience in 2005. And from my perspective, what happened was, I recall I was still working at Food Lion at the time. So I had this process where I would go to work at 10 a.m. But before I would go to work at 10 a.m., I would wake up because I was in the middle of my track career. I would go for a run, maybe a 3-mile run, 3 to 5 mile run, something like that. And then I would come home and I would have my quiet time, because the year before I felt like I spent a lot of time trying to grow closer to the Lord over the summer, and I went back to school not in the best shape, and I felt it. I felt it pretty badly my sophomore year. So that summer, I said I'm going to be very intentional about staying in shape, and then also growing in my faith. And I remember we were going to this event that summer, and I will never forget praying to God and saying, "Okay, Lord, I really want to see you made real. I believe that you're real, but I really want to see. I want to see you show yourself strong in a way that I've never seen before." So I recall praying that day, and I said, "God, I'm gonna pray for something crazy. I'm gonna pray that we'd see Bruce's leg grow."
Amen.
Now that's like a crazy prayer. That's not something that you see on a daily basis. But this is me really just kind of testing God. I'm like, this is who you say you are. Okay, this is who I say I believe in. Why not believe in something like this? Or why not believe that something like this could happen? And I've known that sometimes we will see healings and miracles at some of these events. But I'm like, I want a taste of this, if you will, by way of you, of course. So I recall praying that day, and the Lord spoke to me, or what I believe what I heard the Lord speak to me. Don't just ask me for his healing, begin to thank me for his healing. And I was like, okay, what did I just hear? Because at the time I'm still like learning what it means to hear the voice of the Lord. It wasn't audible or anything, but I felt that impressed heavily on my heart. And then when we get to that event, and we're in the line, and you're standing right behind me, and I just remember the whole process. And the guy says, "What else are you thanking God for?" And I say, "I'm still believing that my friend's going to be healed." And then the guy taps your legs together, just how the Lord showed me. And I just remember being so amazed. I remember everybody that was around was so amazed. And the cool thing is 20 years later, that's still a part of my own faith journey, and it's also a connector that we have together, as friends, as brothers. Me learning what it means to love my neighbor as myself. So not just praying that prayer selfishly so that I can see something, but saying, "Lord, my brother actually has a need, and I think part of me loving him right now would be to pray that you would move on his behalf."
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that, man. I appreciate that you did that. That was you asked God for that for a birthday present, if I remember correctly, and you did, and it was great for me too.
It actually happened like the night, like going into my 20th birthday. And so 20 years later, like nobody. See, you can debate different things about scripture and whatever, but nobody can never take that experience from us.
That's right. At all.
No, like
not possible.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and I actually remember like that next year, you like learning your muscles were like just a little different because the lengthening of your legs was a little different. I remember, us being in the apartment talking, and you said, "Man, my legs are a little sore because I'm not used to my other, my one leg being this length." And that's just part of the real process, man. And I'm so glad that we had that experience together. So
yeah, man. I am too.
Okay, go ahead.
No, I was just saying I am too. The Lord blew my mind that day, and it was almost like, for me, like I said, the time at VCU was really rough for me, but it was like that was a really bright spot in that summer. And then we went back into it. He's like, "All right, for me, it was like, just so you know, Bruce, I'm still Lord and I'm still God. Now you got to go back here into this place where a lot of other things are considered God.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And you have to deal with that and some of the church drama and all of that. You gotta go back just so you know. So for me, it was like if there was a, I'm sorry if I'm rambling, but it was like if my heart was like, I'm going to fall away. I'm going to fall, like, because there was definitely times where I was like, you know what, I'm young, whatever. I'm just going to do whatever I want to go do and whatever.
We both
It
dealt
was
with that
almost
that
like
year, man.
he was like, here's a nail and here's a hammer. I'm anchoring you into this ground and I'm putting you on a leash. And you cannot move from this spot because you had this experience and you know who I am. I'm showing you who I am.
Right. Right.
And I appreciate him for it. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we both learned after having such an amazing summer and the Bible studies we had, and so many people coming to the Bible studies that we were leading, and then going back to school. Man, that year was hard, and there's no other way to describe that year other it was hard. But at the same time, I'm also glad for everything that we were able to learn because we made it out.
Absolutely, by the grace of God.
We made it through, and if we weren't roommates that year, even with some of the ups and downs that we may have had as we were both kind of going through our own process in that manner, I can only imagine if we didn't have each other as friends and as brothers to help each other through some of the ups and downs. And so yeah, that's another reason where I'm just so grateful. I mean, I think that not only that summer but that year really strengthened the bond that we had together as brothers. Let's move on a little bit forward. So I know after VCU, you ended up, you were in corporate America for a little while, and then you ended up going to UVA to get your MBA. And is it called the School of Darden, or is it just called Darden Business School? What's it called?
Darden Business School. Yes, that's what it's called. Okay. So I was very fortunate, very, very fortunate to be there. I always had the sense that I would go to that school. I didn't know how I was going to do it or how I was going to pay for it, because it was like, even back then it was, I think the tuition was like $50,000 a year, and it's a 2-year program. I was like, man, $50,000 a year? Nobody even paid me $50,000. I didn't even make $50,000 when I was doing. Wow. Geico was a great company. That's where I went to work before Darden, but I did not make $50,000 a year there. So for the school to, you know what it was like, things came kind of full circle for me, because like when I was a little boy, I hated going to Charlottesville, especially during those 2 years of my surgeries, because every time I go to Charlottesville, it'd be some complication, some bad news. I got to go through some pain and some horrible experience and whatnot. And so then when I went back there as an adult, it was like God allowed it to be full circle. So I went there for business school, and I got a full ride. I was very fortunate to get a full ride, because that rarely happens. It happens to some people, but it rarely happens. And I was one of the people who was fortunate enough to have it.
Wow.
And that in turn allowed me to, that just helped me out substantially financially. And that's what I did. And that was really a transformative experience within itself. So the way that the business school works is it's 21 months, and there's a summer in between where you can get an internship. But if you do full time, and that's what I did, then your core curriculum is what you have in the first year, and they overload you with work, like a lot. They basically transform you from this regular person to an executive through that experience. And the way that they do it is they give you 200 hours worth of work in 168 hour. There's only 168 hours a week, so they give you 200 hours of work a week. So basically, if you think about it from a work perspective, you do in a week what a normal person would do in a month. Because 200 hours is, let's call it four 50-hour work weeks. So they work the heck out of you, and you get really good at doing stuff and managing your time, because you have to. Because if you don't, you're going to drown and you're going to fail. You absolutely have to. It's like you have to adapt that way. But it was a great experience. The first year was really, really hard on me, and you had gotten you and another friend of mine who was also in my wedding, Justin. Both of y'all had gotten married within like a week of each other. during the core time, and I was like, man, these guys is over here getting married. And every moment of I'm gasping for air for every moment I can get. But I went there to try to make sure I supported y'all during the time so that y'all got
Yeah.
married. And then second year is like a country club. Like you just take elective courses and you do whatever you want, and you've gone through the hard part, and it's what people think of when they think of an executive out there golfing all day. You can really kind of basically do that second year if you want. It's a night and day difference. But that's what the whole experience was like, and it was great. I had a good time there.
Wow. So, like, I'm thinking back to your first year, when I got married, when Kira and I got married, and now knowing, because at the time I didn't realize how much work you had, right? And so first, you went to my bachelor weekend, and now it was about as G-rated of a bachelor weekend as you could possibly have.
Yeah, it was a good time. We had a great time there.
We ate food. We went to Charlotte, went to Cookout. We went to a pancake house or something like that. Saw a Christian movie and went bowling. So it was about as G-rated of a bachelor weekend, but it was really just a fellowship with the brothers, man. Just a fellowship with the brothers. But what I didn't realize was how, like, the sacrifice that you were making. I had no idea. Until like this conversation now, 200 hours worth of work, because we would talk, but we didn't really talk about this. And maybe as a friend, I should have been asking you more about it. For 200 hours a week of work and 168 hours, and then you came down to Charlotte for a weekend.
Yeah,
man.
In that 168 hours, you still got to poop, you got to eat, you got to shower, you got to sleep. you got to start to do some recruiting. It is they really pack it in there. So there's no way any person can do everything, but you have to be able to do enough in order to tread water, and that's what you learn. That's really a skill set within itself, but that really helped me out later on once I experienced that. But yeah, I mean, it was a sacrifice, man. But I wasn't going to like say, hey, I'm going through all this stuff. I'm not the type. I'm sort of like my mom in that regard. I'm going through something, I'm gonna say what I got to say. But if someone understands it, they understand it. They don't, they don't. But to me, it was still good. Yeah. It was well worth it. I would not have missed your bachelor party and your wedding for the world. I was so happy to be there, and I still remember when your wife was walking down the aisle and the look that both of y'all had on each other's faces. I was like, man, there's nobody else in the room. I'm not even in this room. Just the two of them. It is literally just the two of them in this room together.
Oh my goodness, I'll never forget it either, man. And I'm just going to say thank you again for coming to that weekend and just hanging out with us that weekend. And so I guess it just kind of explains, because even as friends, as brothers, and you being the best man in my wedding, and we're at my wedding rehearsal, and I'm like, where the heck is Bruce? Like, where the heck is Bruce? So I guess this is where you were.
That's why it was. I probably should have explained it better. I'm sorry about that. I should have explained it better, but that's what was going on. You got married, Justin got married, and then there was it was core curriculum, and it was just all at the same time. And I was like, I had to really pace myself for what classes, because you miss something. Just to kind of put it in perspective, you miss one class at a pace like that, and you're like really, really, really behind and struggling, especially if something builds on something else. So I'm sorry that I didn't explain that, but it was I was just trying to survive. Basically.
Yo, man, it's no problem. But man, next time, just give your boy a chance to be like, hey, I got you. Do what you got to do, man. I don't think we'll have any more times like that. Yeah, but man, this I'm glad we had this conversation, because it's actually helping to, we've talked about it a little bit, but but I think now I have a better understanding of why, of why you missed that time, and also, to see you come out on the other side, man, to see you coming out on the other side, getting that MBA was a beautiful thing. So you go through the process and you get you get that MBA from from Darden, which is a prestigious school. There's a school where a lot of people would say, I want to go there.
Yeah.
That would be a dream school, a dream scenario. What happened? What was your experience after graduating from Darden?
So I did the least entrepreneurial thing a person could do, and I went to go work for ExxonMobil in Texas, and doing basically their accounting, oil and gas accounting, and the work was fine. The culture wasn't great for me, but the work was fine. And when I was out in Houston, so that was the first time that I was like in a big city. First time I lived outside of Virginia. First time I'd really made good money, and I still didn't like go out and buy a new car or anything. Like I'm still riding my same hoop ride because I was like, hey, this thing's paid off, and I'm not. I knew even then that I had to break out because I didn't want to just. There's a friend of mine who made the same money that I did, and he went and unfortunately and just would live paycheck to paycheck and blow his money. But I was like, God bless him. That ain't gonna be me. I'm gonna do everything that I can to not do that. So I held my breath for 3 years there, maxed out my contribution to my 401k, and they matched it to a certain extent. I don't remember to what extent they matched it, but I knew in my spirit that I needed that for later. And that's what I basically did. I paid down my student loans. So I still had some student loans because of living expenses. One from undergrad, from VCU, I had some student loans, and then from living expenses when I was at UVA. Fortunately, I didn't have to pay tuition, but I did have to cover living expenses. So I graduated with about $70,000 worth of student loan debt, and I paid that down in 3 years. And at the end of the 3 years, I was just like, yo, these people are. ExxonMobil is a good place. They teach you to be very thorough and asking questions and all of that. And I understand the way that it's managed, but the culture when I was there was, like I said, it was as non-entrepreneurial as it could be. I was never going to run a P&L because they don't. If you're not an engineer, you're not going to own a P&L, which I'm like, I just spent 2 years of my life learning to own a P&L, and y'all only want me to do accounting for the rest of my career. You pay me well, but you only want me to do accounting for the rest of my career. Okay. And then the other thing was they put me into a role in audit, and I was a terrible auditor. I was probably as bad as an auditor as I was a security guard, because I just can't do police work. If you asked me to go and be a policeman, I would be the worst policeman in the world. I'd be like, because I'm just a very lackadaisical, lenient guy until I'm not about any particular thing. Like most of the time, my personality is very chill and relaxed. And then there's just something comes along, and then I turn into a sniper with having to get something done.
This is true. This is very true.
And so that type of personality is just a bad personality to do anything to deal with, like auditing or security or something like that. I'm much better suited as a general manager. So I left there on the anniversary of the day that I started. Like God planned the whole thing out so that I would be able to keep all of their contributions to my 401k. I tried to start a couple of businesses, and nothing worked. And we can go into more detail about that. Nothing really worked. And then I worked some odd jobs. And it ended up being, they pushed me out. I don't know if ExxonMobil fired me or if I quit, because I gave them notice, and they were like, no, we're not going to let you take a month. You're going to go out in 2 weeks. That was 2 weeks notice. This is when you got to go. So we're pushing you out. I was like, all right, whatever. And that was that. They just didn't want me in their organization toward the end. Once they saw the way that I am. And to kind of put it in analogy, it was like accountants are very much like ducks. They do things in a certain order socially, and when it's time for everybody to go from the air to the water, they do things in that way. I am not very much like a duck. I am much more, and I'm not saying a duck what I'm is better than anybody else. Everybody has their function and their need for what they are. I can understand accounting, but what I really am is an eagle or a hawk. So I'm going to fly higher. And when it comes time to swim, you're gonna be like, Bruce, why can't you swim? I'm like, bruh, I'm a hawk. I can't swim. So that's kind of what it was like in that culture. But I thank God for it nonetheless.
Man, you said so much in that, and one thing I want to go back to is, did you say you paid off $70,000 in 3 years?
Yeah, well, I did more than that because my car died, and I had to get in, and I had just made a major payment. My car died, and I just made a big payment to my student loan, so I ain't had no cash, so I had to take out a car loan, which I absolutely hated doing, for that Ford Focus that I had, and then I paid off that Ford Focus in like 3 months because I was so against having a car note. I hate credit card debt and car notes. I hate them both with a passion. I just don't think they get under my skin because I understand mathematically how much that kind of debt destroys wealth. Like, I understand the math behind it. And so really it was about $85,000 of debt that I paid off in the 3 years because I had to take a break for 2 or 3 months from what I was doing for my student loans and pay off my car. But yeah, that's what I did.
Right. So I think it'd be better. Now, obviously, different people still have, their journeys, and you were a single
Yep.
man at the time, no children. So everybody's situation is a little bit different.
Yep.
So when you talk about the sacrifices that you made, now your story is your story, right? So some people may say, I'm going to sacrifice, but maybe not exactly how Bruce sacrificed, but just give me an idea of what did that day-to-day sacrifice look like for you, knowing that you had this end goal in mind to eliminate your debt.
Yeah. So, I mean, I would wake up, let's call it 6:30 in the morning, brush my teeth, get ready, take my shower, get dressed, head to work. Had to be out the house for work before, depending on where I was living, let's say before 7, because of Houston traffic. And then I would get into the office at 8. Then I would work for however long. For most of the time, what I was working on was like the monthly close and and kind of getting engineers to. I said at that time that I herded cats for a living because I had to get engineers to care about accrual accounting, which was something my bosses and the organization cared about, but the engineers absolutely did not care about.
Did not care
all.
about it.
and they would mess things up, and they would try to throw me under the bus, and it was constantly trying to protect myself from being thrown under the bus, and while also still trying to support them in the best way possible. And I'd work from 8 till noon. And then at noon, no matter what, I didn't care what happened in the world, I'm taking a break for lunch because I'm going to eat something. I'm hungry. And that's what I do. And sometimes actually I'd skip lunch occasionally because I'd be so sleepy that I'd turn off the light, shut the door, and go to sleep for an hour in my office. I did that probably once or twice. But usually I go and get lunch. Then I come back from lunch and just work. Continue working until about 6. And then if I needed more work, if I wasn't done with the work that I had to do by 6, what I would do is either just stay late and work till, sometimes I work till like 11 o'clock at night. But I'd stay late and keep working, or I would go home, get dinner, and then try to complete whatever work I could remotely from home. But that's what I did all the time. It's what I did Monday through Friday. It was so much so that one time I was going to go on vacation, and actually I didn't really go on vacation for those 3 years, but my vacation was coming home to see my parents. I was coming to Hampton to see my parents. And
I know about that.
And so what I did was, my boss was like, all right, get Al to do this work for you while you're gone, Bruce. Don't like, he was like, you shouldn't be working on vacation. I was like, all right, cool, whatever. And I walked Al through what I had to do and how I had to do it to support these engineers and whatnot. And his exact words was, I'm not doing that expletive. He said, I ain't doing that. And he didn't do it. So guess what I did on my vacation? I came to Hampton and I was with my parents on for my Christmas break. For Christmas break, I think it was Christmas. It might have been Christmas Day or Christmas Eve. And at like 11 o'clock at night, I was like, this has to be done by this work day in the month. And I went to Denny's and got on their Wi-Fi, fired up my laptop, and I did what had to be done right there on my laptop for a couple of hours, right there in the Denny's on Mercury Boulevard.
Wow.
So that's the dedication, and that's what I'm saying. Some stuff I've learned to just do things and feel about it later. Like one time this lady almost died. God rest her soul, she ultimately did die. But one time this lady almost died in church service, and I had to go and rush and get her orange juice and a burger so she didn't go into diabetic shock before the paramedics got there. And I was fine when I was executing, but then after I found out she was going to live, I sat down and I sat there boo-hoo crying. I was like, oh man, she almost died. That was really cool, because some stuff you just do, you don't feel it while you do it.
Right.
You feel it later. Like,
yeah.
Suck it up and do it and get the feelings out afterward. You can process the feelings later. But that's my philosophy, at least.
Yeah. So when it comes to the disciplines, or spending habits on a day-to-day basis, like what type of things were you doing to help you get to that goal of eliminating that debt?
Yeah, well, I wasn't spending on a bunch of stuff. I mean, the thing I spend the most money on is I eat out for food a lot. I don't like to cook. But other than that, I really wasn't spending money. I was like, I had an apartment with no furniture. I had slept on a mattress, and I had a box spring, literally a mattress and a box spring, and I just slept on that with no furniture. And I had my Xbox, and I found a kitchen set. Some of my neighbors in my apartment were moving out, and they're, hey, look, you want this table and kitchen set? Word, yeah. Let me get that from you. As they were going down the stairs, I'm like, yeah, I'll take that from you, thank you. And then I had that, and I had my kitchen set. So I think some people go and they want to make money so that they can consume. For me, I was like, I want to make money so that I can beat this debt and then ultimately build some wealth, even if it's a little bit at a time. That was really my spending habits. That was basically it. It wasn't anything amazing. I just was very careful about that stuff. That was really it. I so much to the point that even when I would go to the grocery store, I was laughing about it later. I was like, I used to always think like, all right, I can get one cereal box. I can afford one cereal. Which cereal do I want? And it was years later before I realized the programming I had done in my own head is like, oh wow, I can afford multiple boxes of cereal. But it took years for me to realize that I could do that and deprogram my subconscious from saying, all right, we got one choice. What's the optimal choice for the cereal?
Yeah. When it comes to eating out, I could attest to that because I remember that junior year when we were roommates and they had built all these restaurants, beneath our apartment building, and we would come out of our door and smell. If Five Guys was like right there, and we both had our fair share amount of Five Guys. And I remember your parents like sent some ground beef. They sent some ground beef up to you and said, "Man, you spending too much at Five Guys. You need to make your own burgers."
They probably did. I don't remember that, but they probably did.
Yeah. Oh man, it was hilarious because man, you would come out the door and Five Guys was just smelling so good, man, and it was hard for a couple of college students with limited income at the most. I don't think I had a job at that time. Okay, so what happens after that? So you leave Exxon. So what happened in between you leaving Exxon and where you currently are? If I'm not mistaken, you spent some time back at home in your parents' house, right?
Oh yeah, man. It was.
What in the world was that like?
It was rough to do as a 34-year-old man. All right, I'll try to give you the Cliff Note versions of that story. So I left ExxonMobil on June 10th, 2016. I tried to start a business, a dry clean pickup business, with my cousin in Houston. That went absolutely nowhere. I mean, I think we got 2 sales the entire time. It went nowhere. And then I'm like, all right, I'm gonna be okay. I'll try to start something else. I have some savings from this job. I should be okay. Then I'm driving. And I'm leaving Bible study. And there was a place, I'm not going to say what it was, but there was a place in Houston I should not go, and I knew what not to go. And I was like, God, I'm not going to go to that place. I ain't going to go. I went to Bible study specifically. I'm going home. So I'm driving and I'm coming around, I think it was 59 to get on 610, and where they joined together, and somebody had their tire fall off their car. And the car, I'm like this car, and the other car is right here, and the tire's up here. This car hits the tire, bounces it in front of my car. I had no time to stop. My car gets gutted, like the whole under part of my Ford Focus that had recently paid off, and the bumper just gone. So it was going to eat up my money, like my savings, my little bit of savings, which stopped me from moving forward as an entrepreneur, like buying something or doing something more substantial in Houston. I think that's what the Lord was doing at that time, even though it was very frustrating. I was like, you could have just told me don't open anything. I would have not, you know what I'm saying? You could have done that way, God, instead of sitting the tire to mess me up. But that was like a really frustrating moment for me. And I was just like, yo, what in the world is going on? And then I struggled. I was like, all right, well, at this point, I got to get a job. I had this rent now, and my cousin Hamilton was my roommate. I was like, I got to find something. And he was working. He was working at Big Lots, and I didn't have no job. I'm living off of savings. We cooking spaghetti and doing all this. This is how you know it's bad, because I'm over here cooking, because I hate cooking.
This is true.
I hate to cook. But I'm over here cooking and doing all this other stuff and whatnot. And then right around November of that year, and I'm stressed out, and God opens the door for me to get a job at Capital One in Richmond, because I'm like, I'm putting in for jobs in Houston. I'm putting in for jobs back home. I'm like, God, whatever door you open. And I distinctly remember laying on the couch and like with tears coming down my face and playing that song. Is his last name Green? But Travis, I forgot his last name. Like, you made a way.
Yeah, Travis Green. Yeah.
That song at that time, and I was just like, yo, God, I thank you for making a way. I guess you see me, because I was running out of cash. I had my retirement, but in terms of cash, and I didn't want to touch my retirement. There's tax penalties for it, and I needed it to grow, because I'm actually needed in retirement. So I was just like, God, I need you to do something. So then I went to work at Capital One in Richmond. I moved, and we figured all that out and whatnot. And my cousin, I got this 2-bedroom apartment, but then my cousin's like, yeah, I'm going to go live with my other friend. Bruh, are you kidding me? I got this 2-bedroom apartment. I could have got a 1-bedroom and saved some money, and you messing me up. And then I had that job with Capital One for 7 months, and then the contract was up, and they didn't want to renew it with me, which was bad. And so that was a really, really rough point in life. That was 2017. And it was a real low point. And I went into business a little bit with Sonia. And then I was just like, yo, this is not right. I don't understand. Because I was sitting there like openly saying, like, I'm questioning God. Like, you said you reap what you sow. I didn't sow any of this. Why am I reaping this? Where are you? Why? Like, you must hate me. I was like, God must hate me. He over here whooping my behind for no reason. I don't understand what's happening. What are you doing? I didn't sow any of this. I sat up here, went to the right schools. I studied. I worked hard. I did this for years of my life to try to build this the right way. Where are you? Where are you? Why are you putting me through this? Do you ever hear anything that I be saying to you? Like, I would say stuff like very bluntly, and Sonya was like, yo, you over here saying this stuff openly to God. And even her mom was like, you don't say that stuff in front of unbelievers. Okay, whatever. Everybody if I have some thoughts about my questions, I'm going to be open about my questions. I guarantee you I'm not the only person. I'm just the type of person to say the quiet part out loud. A lot of people have gone through this stuff and thought the same thing. And so what happened then was Sony was like, no, I don't want to be in business with you anymore. So I took a loss on that, and God bless her and them that I have no issue or anything like that with them. With her and her husband, with that. But I took a significant loss when I needed cash at that time. And so I just was sitting there struggling. And then at that time, that was the season when I'm over my dad's house and I'm over here stressing like, yo, how am I going to find a job and find work? I'm over my parents' house and my dad comes along. He said, the Lord gave me a word for you. And he says, and I say, okay, well, what's the word? He says, you think that God's going to give you the job that he has for you and then the woman that he has for you, but God's going to do it the other way around. I was like, okay, but I still need a job. I'm gonna pay these bills.
Like right now, I still need a job right now.
That's great. What am I supposed to do with that? I don't know what you mean by that. So then I ended up getting this job at this other company. The third company still ended up firing me. And I won't say who the company is, but I was doing the revenue accounting for them across the entire world. And because they're in financial services, there's some subjectivity to how they did their books and what they publish and things like that. We had a difference of opinion. We were doing well. I was doing great. They said, oh, Bruce, we love you, blah, 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 blah. And then there was one point where they had some results that they didn't like. And we had a difference of opinion for how those should have been published. I'll put it that way. And so on my integrity, I was like, this is where I stand on this. This is where my stance is on this. Y'all can do whatever you want. This is where I stand. And then 2 weeks later, they fired me.
Wow.
But I was ready for it this time. I was like, okay. I'm like, this third time, you hit me 3 times. All right, this is just, whether it's racism or whether it's the enemy or whatever it is, I know not to depend on you people for my paychecks and for me to be able to eat. I learned y'all just throw me away at any given time that you decide to do it, and that ain't gonna work this time. Mind you, that was a month into them firing me. I met my wife Christina, who you can see back there. A month, and I sat her down when they fired me. I was like, hey, look, I know we like each other and everything like that. If you want to go somewhere else with somebody, I'm not gonna hold it against you. Obviously, I have this craziness in my life over these last 4 years or 3 years. I have been fired 3 times, and I had never been fired before in my life before that. She said, no, we'll be good. We'll figure it out. She was my girlfriend at that time, but that's when I was like really, that's when the Lord used the story to show me, like, because in my mind, I was always thinking, I am only loved because I'm a provider. I'm only going to be valued if I'm a provider, because ain't nobody going to really like just love me for me. It's just not going to happen. Right. And the Lord used that to dispel that myth in my mind.
Wow.
The whole experience. And so then that was October of 2018. And then January of 2019, I was beating the bushes in my network, and I found, and this guy said, Bruce, you ever thought about doing a search fund? It's like, no, I never thought about doing a search fund. That's something that the rich kids at the hoity-toity schools. I mean, went to a hoity-toity school, but I'm definitely not rich. I'm not people going to do all that go and buy a business and try to look for a business for 2 years to find one and run it. And people, basically a search fund, this is the model. If you come from a hoity-toity background, typically, you'll say to some investors, hey, look, give me $400,000 or $500,000 for 2 years. I'm going to live off of the money, and it's going to fund my search expenses. I'm going to look for one good business to buy. You will, for investing that $400,000 or $500,000, and each split it up into increments. Maybe it's $40,000 to $50,000 checks. You'll have the right to buy into my company, and we'll split the equity this way, blah, 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 when it's actually purchased. And that's grown in popularity over time. But fewer and fewer people are actually successfully closing on companies. But that's what we had that conversation January 2019. I had a dream about it, and I started to look into it. And I was like, oh yeah, this is exactly what I'm going to do. So then I moved out of my apartment and moved back in with my parents to look for a business to buy. I found Luxout in July of 2019. It was not the first business, like it wasn't the one I really wanted to buy at that time. I didn't have the vision for buying a stage curtain company. But Christina had she came with me and she was like, yeah, I think this is where you should go. And I was like, really, this? Okay. Well, so I submitted an offer, to Tony in July or August. We went back and forth and he kind of sat on it for a long time. We went back and forth, and then by Thanksgiving of 2019, he had signed the letter of intent that I had given to him, and then I had to coordinate everything with the bank to buy it, and it closed on it on February the 14th of 2020. So I bought a stage curtain company a month before nobody was on stages for 18 months. And
Wow.
and the orders dropped that year, but we were okay. We had such a backlog of things, and God still provided. And now we are slammed. Like I said, we are, over the past 5 years has been great. And what was really cool was when I went in to buy it, I had enough money for the down payment, and I figured out a way to finagle the finances and all of that. But I went from a net worth of just under $200,000 when I was 34 and moved back in with my parents. And before that year was out, I was a millionaire. And now I'm a multi-millionaire at this point. I don't know if I'm ever going to get to $1 billion, because that's 1,000 millions.
Yeah.
But somebody else might, who knows, whatever. Basically that's but that's how it all worked. And so I had some people, I think a lot of times they just think if you really want to get something, you just have to make the sacrifices to do it, and just shut up and sacrifice. Just shut up and sacrifice and go after it. And then you'll get the rare thing that few people are willing to actually go after and experience. Like right now, everybody's trying to go and buy businesses. And these folks, some of them have been through really tough things in their lives, but they say that the search is such a hard thing, and it's like it wears on the mental health and all that other stuff. I was like, by the time after I lost my second job, I was like actually entertaining suicidal ideation. So by the time it was time for me to search, I was just like so on it. I was like, this is light work. This ain't that hard. And then by the time it was time for me to operate, there's certain times that it's hard, but like overall, it ain't as hard as the stuff that God has put me through before, or God has brought me through. I should put me through. He's brought me through before. So whatever, you pick your heart. Everything's hard.
Wow. Yeah. No. You said, you said so much in that, and wow. I'm just letting you know, this is encouraging to me, because as I listen to your story and I consider my journey, and I'm like, okay, he said something here that I need to hear in order to help me to continue to move forward toward the calling and the goals and the things that God has placed in front of me. And so I guess a question I would have for you, because you didn't have any background in this industry at all, did you?
Nope.
So if you look at this process, like say through a one day at a time mindset, like what did you do to become competent in this, so that you could grow the business, so that you could grow in the industry?
It's a very good question. And I'm not to say that what I did was the be all end all and the right thing to do.
Right. It's your story. Yeah, it's your story. Right.
Just what I did. So what I would do is I would wake up every morning like I had a job. And Christina would say, you work harder than everybody I know. You're not working, but you work harder than everybody I know. But I wake up every morning, check the listings, following up with brokers, seeing what sort of confidential information memorandums. That's really like a presentation about the company. Like it's a document about the company with giving its history and its finances and everything like that. I would look through a lot of them, thousands of them. Even went out to Kansas for a week and looked at a business out there during that time. So I was like always on it. Like I went back to that first year Darden work ethic of really cycling through things and doing the most. Like just like I'm getting out of this and I'm going to find the very best investment and it's going to work out well, and I'm going to quickly make an offer, and the sellers have to either poop or get off the pot if they want to do something with me. And I came at it with that energy. And I also, if something wasn't going to work out, I always kept something in the background behind me. All right, you don't want to work with this, that, the other, or the deal falls apart. Maybe you have, maybe your business says it earns this much, but then we do due diligence and it really earns this much, and you was lying about that. Well, I don't want to buy business from a liar, so you can get. We'll chuck the deuces. I'm gonna have something else coming. So I constantly made sure I had enough deal flow, or tried to make sure I had enough deal flow, and I was on it as much as I possibly could be to try to follow up with what I said I was going to do, with brokers and with sellers and everybody. And then everybody was surprised when I bought the company. That first day, one of my favorite employees, still with me to this day, almost fell out the chair because when I walked to the bathroom, she was like, she just gave me this evil eye, like, "Who are you? What are you doing in here this day?" I was like, because I had drove up from Hampton and I had to pee because that long drive, you just got to pee. I was like, use the bathroom, and then I come in and Tony gathers the entire company. He's like, "Hey, I just want to let everybody know, this is Bruce and he's your new owner. He's the new owner. He's the new owner of the business." And she was just like, and almost fell out the chair.
Wow,
but I told her
wow.
we laughed about it. I'm like, I'm just glad that you care about your work. You care about your work environment. You don't want any random people in an environment.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Man, this has been amazing. And so I have two final questions. One,
Yeah.
what was it like for you as you, like, once you attained, or once you purchased the company and you had to grow in knowledge in order to see it become successful? Like what did you do? Like, did you have like a daily routine, or what was it that you did to help you be successful once you bought this company in an industry where you didn't really have any background knowledge?
Well, industries don't matter all that much. Once you learn the management skill set is what business school teaches people. And so I learned the manager skill set. I knew I knew how to be a general manager. I didn't really know. I don't know how to make a shade. I don't know how to sew a curtain. I don't know how to hang up a curtain. I don't know how to rope a system. I don't know how to install a motor or any of that stuff. But I do know how to oversee an entire process, figure out where the bottlenecks are. I know how to manage cash flows, do all of that. And so what I did was beforehand, I'm sorry, this goes back to your other question, but I want to make sure I answer it. I made a very thorough plan of where cash was going to come from and where it was going to go. And it kept optimistic, a base case, and a downside scenario. And in all of those scenarios, I was still solvent and able to pay my note. So I was like, all right, we're good there. And then I checked and considered that versus reality of what we were seeing. That's what I did from that point. So I said, all right, cash flow. As a CEO, really your job, you only really have 3 jobs. And this is the importance of the job. The first one is manage cash flow, and you better do it doggone well. The second one is to manage vision of the company, kind of like the whole way that we all fit together. And I didn't already forgot what the third one is, but it's 3 things like that. But you cannot ever get the cash flow wrong. So then what I did from there was, once I had a plan of what the cash flow was, I started to push down and delegate decision making. So people come at me with things like, all right, let's talk through that together. All right, tell me, I'm going to rely on your expertise with this. You've been doing this a lot longer than I have. You're going to know a whole lot more. So I appreciate you working with me here. Let's talk through this together. And then we would figure out, sort of in our culture, how we solve problems together and how we thought through different things. Because it's all as an entrepreneur, it's all you're doing is solving problems all the time. And the more you make, the harder the problems are that you solve, and you have to get a handful of things right. Oh yeah, the third one is getting the right people. You have to have right people.
Yeah, absolutely.
That you're in your organization. You have to be able to figure that part out. And the hardest one, honestly, is the people part. The other 2 are not that difficult. But yeah.
Yeah, no, people are, I'm in a people business and working in a school, and I tell you what, people are complicated, whether it's the kids, the parents, the staff, all of us, trying to bring all of the personalities and different backgrounds and lifestyles together to accomplish a goal, no matter what industry, is challenging, and it's challenging. It's not
hard.
yeah, it is not for the faint of heart at all. So here's my last question.
Okay.
So for my audience and for the people who are listening to this podcast, we're learning, and we always say we're learning, we're growing, and we're getting better one day at a time. If you had to leave a final bit of advice for us as we're all learning together, what would that be? Whether it's our goal, whether it's something that we're trying to overcome, what advice could you leave with us as we leave here today?
Sure. Basically, we all have things that we want, and sometimes they're big, hairy, audacious goals. Jesus says you are to ask, seek, and knock. So it's not that you just pray. It's not that you just work. You have to do both and knock on doors when something is in the way. So you got to ask, seek, and knock to get after the thing that you want persistently over and over again. What I would say is think about that goal while you're going to golf and doing your work, your normal routine, and whatever your habits are. And no matter what, every single day, no matter what, except for unless it's the Sabbath day, like you don't work on the Sabbath day. But other than that, 6 days a week, every single day for those 6 days, you do something to move forward toward that goal. You have time. You have to manage it. Everybody has to manage it. So that's what I would say, like, no matter what. Like, so when I was sitting there busting my hump for ExxonMobil, what I did was like, all right, I know I have this entrepreneurial bug in some sort of way. What can I do? All right, I made a course for using Excel, and I built these cases sort of like we would use it in business school because I wanted to keep that part of myself in my mind alive, even if the culture around me was trying to kill it. And I ain't trying to be talking bad about the culture there, but it definitely was trying to kill it. So that's what I would say. No matter what, you have to move forward a little bit, no matter what, every single day. And that's really it.
Wow, man, that's good. Not only my audience, but I'm going to take that, as I consider my next goals and the next things that God has in front of me. I'm going to take that, and I'm going to be sure that I apply that, as I continue in my journey. Bruce, thank you so much for doing this. Thank you so much for spending some time with me today and just going through your story. I mean, this has been so much. It's been so rich. From your childhood to the challenges you have there, up through college and then now as an entrepreneur. That's I say you've experienced some success, but I still say you're on your way because I know this is not the end. And I'm grateful for you. I'm grateful for your time. I'm grateful for your friendship. I'm grateful for you being a brother. And fam, remember, we're going to continue to do this, and we're going to continue to learn together. We're going to continue to grow together, and we will continue to get better one day at a time. You got this.